Hey guys, so the next thing that I think we need to talk about is kind of the building blocks of a website. So this talk kind of goes in conjunction with the HTML introduction talk that is also a part of this module. So the HTML introduction is really hardline focused on the nuts and bolts of a web page, whereas this building blocks is really focused on the nuts and bolts of a website. So if you wanted to kind of track the progress of HTML over time and CSS over time, this is kind of the way it goes. It starts in 1991 and then it goes all the way to we're about somewhere over here now, and now we're solidly just in HTML5, just in CSS3, and so because of that, there are some new advantages that are available to us in the way that we write the core content of our websites. And so the first of which is I want to just kind of pose a question. Is it easier for you to just be able to write in, go into your browser and write ttu.edu and hit enter and it goes to a site, or would you rather have to type in www.ttu.edu/index.html? Well, each is really the same. They both link to a page, even if you can't see it. However, the magic of the index.html, which the index is your home page, right? So your index.html is the page that people will see very first when they go to your web address. So if you go to justinkeene.com, you will see an index.html on my website, right? And it's the same as what some people might call a home or a default.html. For the sake of this class, we were always going to call it index. So the index is always where people are going to start on your site, okay? And that's because it's just so much easier to be able to write, yourpage.com, and your web browser knows that it's looking for this, okay? So let's talk through then, if that's what your first page is, let's talk through some of the things that are really important to have in a web directory. So a directory is a set of folders that is placed onto an external server somewhere that people access through a web address, right? So I would suggest that you have a folder on there called images. Every image for this class, every image for your site, you should store in that folder, okay? And then outside of that, you're going to have your index page. So your index page needs to just sit at the top, what's called the root level of your directory. So the web page just comes right here. It can find your index really quickly. Then if you want, you could store your other pages into folders as well if you want to organize it that way. So let's say you had a folder for birds, and in that you had parrots.html, so an entire page just about parrots, entire page just about ravens. Then you had another folder about mammals, and within that you had a folder for four-legged mammals, okay? And then you also had one for two-legged mammals. And then you had another folder for lizards. Okay, this would be a reasonable way to organize this. For the sake of this class, you can organize your directory however you see fit, provided that your index.html is in the root of the directory, so index does not sit underneath any other folder somewhere, and that all of your images are within an images folder. I don't care how you organize all the rest of your site. Organize it in whatever way is the most logical for you. Okay, so some practical tips real fast. This is going to trip you up eventually if you don't get this right the first time. Whenever you are naming a web page, so you're naming cats.html, it's really, really helpful if you use single word, lowercase file names. When longer names are necessary, separate the words with a hyphen. I would not suggest you use, certainly not a space. I would not suggest an underscore. I would not suggest shoving them together, and really, really, really avoid doing shoving them together and using an uppercase letter. You always want to make sure that your file names are followed by the extension for HTML. If you have any previous experience with web design, maybe you took a class in high school or something, you might have seen .htm before. HTML is this weird old version of HTML that still kind of works on some browsers some of the time, but really it's an old vestige of Microsoft front page. So we always want to make sure that we use HTML. So you might have, cat.html, dogs.html, that kind of thing, but you would not have dogsareawesome.html with the first letter of every word capitalized and spaces in between them or anything like that. That would not be helpful. Okay, so the next thing to understand is that whenever you have a user come to your website, there are essentially two ways that you could bring them there. There's what is called the full address, and the full address involves a scheme, a server name, a path, and a file name. And what that means is this. Okay, so the scheme is HTTP, the server name is www.deps, which is departments.ttu.edu. The path is everything after this slash, right? And then the file name is this get biog, and they actually have an underscore, so that's a no-no, but they have an underscore biog.php, and then they want record 210. Okay, so that would be one way to draw people in. You want to use this if you are trying to link from your page to someone else's server or someone else's site. So if you're staying within your personal site, you do not have to do this, but if you are trying to link from your site to my site, you need to use a full address. So that's called an absolute URL. A relative URL is the address from your current location to the next location, and this is for moving within your site, within your server. Okay, so you need to imagine that you're on the home page and you're sending someone to the dogs page that we just laid out in that directory. Well, dogs page is under the folder mammals, and within mammals it's under a folder called 4 legs, and then the file name is dog.html. So that's all well and good. That would take you from the index to the dog page. Now imagine that you're on the dogs page and you want to send someone to the parrots page. So dogs is in a couple folders deep under mammals, and parrots is under birds. Okay, so you would need to write something like this. This .. slash tells the computer, hey, I'm in this folder, go back one. Okay, so it's like hitting the back button in Safari or File Manager or whatever. So if you have 2 of these, it's telling it, hey, go back 2 file structures in the directory, go back to the root directory basically. And then you could write something like that and it would be just fine. This is specifically for use on internal pages. So if you are going within your site, you're going to need to use relative URLs. It'll make things a lot faster. Okay, so a quick note about organizing your files. If you have it on a USB drive or Dropbox, or you already purchased a server space or whatever, I would suggest that you create a folder where everything for your site is going to go. So you don't have random things sitting around on your desktop and other things in another folder and then a whole other folder somewhere else on an external hard drive. Everything in a singular place. And then what I would do if I were you is I would have it on your USB drive, and I would make an exact copy of that USB drive. Every time you make a change, make sure that you have an exact copy of that on the server or on Dropbox or somewhere else, because inevitably you're accidentally going to save over a file and you're going to lose your website. This happens every semester to me, so please make sure that you have 2 or 3 backups of everything you do, because every semester a student comes to me and says that they've lost their site towards the end, and I weep deeply with them in my office and then tell them, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can really do. So make sure that you keep backups everywhere that you can. Okay, so within that folder, I would suggest that you create 2 folders. I would have one called assignments and one called images. By the end of this module, I would suggest that you have a folder structure set up for yourself that looks something like this. Okay, so that you have the folder called site, or whatever you're going to call it, my site for Keen's class or whatever, and within that you have a folder called assignments, a folder called images, and create a blank HTML page called index.html. Okay, and within that index.html page, what I want you to do is I want you to create a blank template page. Now you're saying, but Justin, I don't know how to do that. Great, I'm going to teach you how to do that. So every web page, every HTML page has 6 required elements. The first is the doc type. So we talked about this in the last module. The way you denote a doc type is with this exact statement. So the caret, the exclamation point, doc type in all caps, then there's a space, then HTML, all lowercase, and then end the caret. Okay? The next thing is that you're going to say, hey, I'm about to start some HTML, and you're going to say it this way. HTML space lang equals, and then in quotes you're going to say en. And basically what this says is, hey, I'm about to write some stuff, and it's going to be written in English. So if you're going to use another language, you need to go find the other language code right here, and it will help you do that. Then you're going to have the head, and in the head you would mark it like this. And remember, everything that's in the head does not actually show up on the web page. It just simply helps the browser know how to show what it's going to show, not what it's going to show. Okay, so then you have this thing called character encoding, and basically this is telling it, hey, use a regular keyboard setup, all that kind of stuff. So you need to type in this exact statement with the space and the slash and the whole thing. Title is something we've not done yet, but we're going to talk more about it coming soon. The title goes in between a title tag, and this is what shows up in that top bar. If you open it up in Firefox or Chrome or Safari, that is what shows up. So if you want to say, this is my awesome website at the top, this is where you would type that, is in the title. Okay, so that's the head. In the body, you're going to have a body tag just like that. And if you happen to go purchase the book, you can look at page 43 for a further example of this. You can also look back into the videos from module 1 where I showed you how to do it, or you can go and look at the HTML introduction video that's a part of this module, module 2, and it will have all of that explained as well. Thanks.